Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully you can both see the slides. Let me know if you just speak up and let me know if you can't see it. And also you can hear me. I do know I speak quite fast, and I'm speaking fast because I don't want to keep you for very long, longer than I actually have to. And this is something we've been talking about doing for quite a while, which is providing a proper induction to committees. I'm fully aware that you guys are already working and in place, have done some great work already. As I was saying earlier, this just puts some sort of context around what you're doing. One of the main things is to say, thank you very much. We're very pleased that you have actually, that's supposed to be a picture of me there in the top. You've joined us to volunteer, and that's, hopefully some of the information that I'm giving here will actually be information that you haven't necessarily had before. So I'm going to look at some of these various areas, some of the things you'll already be familiar with, hopefully with things like the volunteer portal. And obviously those of you who have already been running events will be familiar with some of the forms and templates. And at the end there, we have the Networks Conference, which used to be an in-person conference. And hopefully we will get back to that when I would get the opportunity to meet in person, lots of you guys over in the UK. But we are doing these virtually just at the moment as well as your events. What I'm going to look at, this is some of the things. I'm not going to go into huge detail, and I'm going to share all of this with you afterwards. So I'll share the whole presentation, but I'll also share the individual pieces around the different roles, from the chair down to the committee members as well. And I would say, if you could look at this in the context that even no matter what role you've got at the moment, that you could be aspiring to have one of the executive roles on the committee. So that's one way of looking at it. So in general, you'll be aware of this already. I'm your branch coordinator, and in the structure, we have got regions and branches. Now, obviously, the regions that I look after are quite disparate regions, because there's the Middle East, the Asia, and yourselves. So you're all very, very far apart. But as regards me looking after them, they're the areas I look after. But it is a little bit difficult, obviously, with the time scales people work on to be cohesive as a region. But we will try, and I know you guys are looking at how you can work with others as well. Where you see along the way here, I have got links, and there are lots of links like that to some of the information. You can get more information on the presentation. Not going to go through those here just at the moment. And I am going to look at what we see here. The purpose of the branch, in case you were in any doubt, is to promote occupational safety and health, to facilitate collaboration. That's what I was just talking about, whether that be collaboration with stakeholders that are local to your own region, or collaborating with some perhaps of the groups that IOSH has got, or with some of the other regions as well. And by and large, the big thing is providing professional development and CPD opportunities for all of the members that you look after in your region. This is just it in a little bit more detail. So these are the main things. So championing IOSH, collaborating, and professional development. So again, as I say, I'll share these with you so you can have a look at these at some other stage. And the various ways, again, you're familiar with these things, but if you will be aware that you obviously have your committee meetings. You've got a good structure for that. That's setting up really well. You've had your AGM. You've all been elected by it. I'm not going to go into the details there. The very fact of actually getting yourselves on a committee means you've been through the AGM process. And obviously the end there, the third thing, are the events that are run, which are one of the big parts. So they're not the be all and the end all, but it's obviously one of the main aims of the roles that you're in, wherever those roles are on the committee. I'll just move Yeah. And looking at the structure, as I say, this won't be news to you anyway. And what I'm looking at here are the main structures. Not every committee necessarily has a vice chair, so sometimes that's missing. But in general, you have chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, communications coordinator, and then the elected committee members. And like yourselves, you can have co-opted members as well. So again, you've been through that, so you're familiar with that. Branches have these 5 officers, and you can have up to 12 committee members. You don't have to have 12. And there is a little bit there about a quorum. This is a quorum in relation to any voting that could take place. Voting doesn't take place very often, but obviously in relation to co-opting somebody, that was an incidence where you would have had a vote and you would have had to have a quorum, a minimum of 4 committee members actually that were there and present and voting for the people. Just to look in more detail, and I'm going to put these 2 up together because they do work very much together, which are the chair and the vice chair. And obviously, if there is a good synergy between a chair and vice chair, they can actually share out a lot of the roles. Something that I'll come on to as well, and part of this is the fact that all of these are covered under what we call Regulation 15. That is available on the volunteer portal. If it's new to you, it probably is a good idea to have a look. It's not very long, but it does tell you that some of the main roles and responsibilities of chair and vice chair: to chair a meeting, the vice chair to do it in the absence of the chair, to be the main focal point of communication, etc. I'm not going to read all of these things through, but it is about sort of leading the committee, as you'll be aware. And if we just look at this in a little bit more detail, this just sort of gives you the committee, how the committee is put together, the activities of the chair within the committee, how they communicate, and how it is actually covered by governance. So all of these roles that we're looking at are actually covered by governance, which, as I say, is all added up and put together in the Regulation 15. And so you can have a look at that yourselves if you want to see that. Things like under the activities, you'll see that it is required, or it is asked, that you would provide a list, a program of events and projects that will be carried out during the period, and then the overseeing of those meetings and activities, which you have in place as well. Communication is a big thing. It's a big thing in all the roles, and it isn't just the main thing that the communications coordinator does. It is the responsibility of everybody either to take on board the communication or to be part of sharing the communication. So that's doing things like you would do as a committee, sharing things that are going on, events, how events have gone, what events you have planned, information also that comes through from IOSH headquarters. So it's about having that and sharing it. The chair's term of office is 2 years, and as I say, in the process that you went through this year, you'll be aware that even if you were already serving, that had a restart because of these virtual AGMs that we were running. So it starts from this period going forward, and there is obviously a re-election for up to a maximum of 4 consecutive years, which is something that is probably a good thing, because you get some continuity, and then if you have a succession plan in place, that can be an even better thing as well. I'll look on the vice chair as being somebody who definitely supports all the activities of the chair. And so pretty much what you're seeing here are the same sort of activities, just saying that it actually supports and assists the chair. And hopefully that is what the role is. Again, the term of office is the same. The secretary, I mean, all of these roles are really important, but the role of the secretary is an important role as well. And it's about coordinating and maintaining all of the documentation, all of the things like the records, the correspondence that would come through. So it is all about being sort of quite an organized person and communicating that in whatever way works for the committee, communicating all of those. Coordinating and filing activities, arranging meetings. Obviously, in the current virtual scenarios that we have at the moment, the actual venues are not happening. So the actual setting up the links, for example, comes through myself, and hopefully, as we were hearing as well in your planning meeting, this is something that we will have a mixture of going forward. But the organising, maintaining attendance records, that is all the job as like of the secretary. Again, as I said, communication really important to all of these roles, and it's really important for the secretary to be the person if they are receiving information. And I will, for example, use the secretaries quite a lot for dissemination of information, hopefully in not an overloading way, but I need to be sure that if I pass on information, if it gets passed to the secretary, then that gets disseminated to the rest of the committee as well. And again, I've got something in here about the term of office. What I will do is provide all of these little pieces separately afterwards and send those through so that whoever has got these roles or is looking at these roles can have a look or can see it at a moment what exactly the role entails. The branch treasurer, again, an important role in it, and it is still an important role even though we have been through a period where there hasn't been spending, for example, but it is important and will be important. And I'm sure we all believe that we will get back to a stage where we will have in-person events and meetings. And it's really important that the treasurer works with the chair and with myself on all of the financial matters, and that they are the person who our finance department will be sending statements, etc., through when they are relevant to be sent through. Okay, that's the treasurer is on the committee. Obviously, there is the managing the budgets. How this physically happens is a separate module. I don't think everybody needs to understand all of that, particularly at the moment. But so what I am going to do is I'm going to invite treasurers and along to a separate session so that we can cover off how these things actually physically happen, because I am aware that in IOSH, for example, you'll all be aware that when you run an event, there is a particular form, so that helps us to get all the correct information. In the same way, in the finance sense, there are some particular forms and particular records that need to be kept. So that's something we can go through separately. And that's a little bit about the term of office. There are, it says here that about the finance slides being in module 5, and that's the part of the induction that I'm not going to go into can say this evening. I'm trying to think. Yes, it is this evening in too much detail, and I can cover that off separately, and hopefully the treasurers will be able to come along to that session as well. And if I can look at the communications coordinator in the same way, because this is a role that it's not that there's not an awful lot going on. There is a lot going on at the moment, but there's a lot more beneath these things that I'm talking about here. So the activities are to lead on highlighting all of the campaigns that are actually being run by the branch. And this is small writing in a box here, because there's a number of methods of doing that. And what I will do is go in further detail at a separate session with communications coordinators, hopefully with a group, so that there can be a little bit of sharing as well. You can see how some other people do it as well, and to understand the different ways. There's a little bit more about that going forward in the other sections, but I won't do it in as much detail because I will do that at a later date. One of the pieces that we just wanted to bring you is the governance structure, just so that you can really put a context around where you guys sit yourselves. If you're not all, even if you are already aware, it might just sort of pull everything together so you can see where everybody sits. So this is just the first picture of, as you say, the blocks of people where we have all of the members and the council with the various committees, the board of trustees, and the chief executive and a senior leadership team in IOSH who report into the chief executive. And just looking at that in more detail, I'm not going to go into each of these in huge detail for you. You will be aware of the presidential team, I think specifically because they've been very active in the last role while our president, Jimmy Quinn, has been president. He's made a huge push, and the team around him as well, to get the presidential team involved in a lot of the regional activities, get them more out there and more visible to the members. And it's also supporting your activity, which I think is really important, that they have actually spotted the fact that there is this really good work being done out in the regions, which from like a headquarters couldn't possibly do all the work that the branches do. So it is something that's actually confirming that sort of work and supporting it from a presidential. So we will, if you haven't already seen, we will see those presidential team coming along and supporting activities that you guys run as well. This is what I was talking about earlier, which is Regulation 15. In a way, it's you know, a little bit of a dry sort of document because it does sort of lay out how branches are governed. But if you haven't, you know, do have a look at it because it tells you exactly how these things. And as I say, I'll pass this on to you so you can get the link that's here. There's a link onto the website, onto the volunteer portal, where there is you can have a look at that. It's not terribly long, and it's slightly vague in some ways, which is not a bad thing because it means you can work around the structures that it tells you about there. What it does help you with is the nominations for elections and the AGMs. And as I said, that we did have to go and get an amendment to the regulation in order to allow virtual AGMs, because that wasn't something that was actually even thought about, I think, when Regulation 15 came in initially. There is something as well around what we call our business rules, and there's something here around you'll obviously be familiar with the code of conduct, because that's related to your own membership, but as well, in order to be on the committee, you did have to sign the code of behavior and the volunteer principle. So hopefully you did read that when you had to sign that. The way it worked with us was when we got a nomination, before that nomination could be passed forward, it had to be checked that subscriptions and CPD were up to date. And then, as you'll know, you got a link for the code of behavior, and then that had to be signed online as it was. I have links on this document as well. So if you didn't have the time, if you weren't able to, or you hadn't got the time to look at the videos, for example, it's a good idea to have a look at that. And see, it's all laid out in black and white, and it's all links into the fact of the charitable status of IOSH and the charitable objects that we have to adhere to as an organisation. This is probably getting down to, and I'm just going to put everything up there all together, something again which totally aware you were working towards, but this is just laying out in black and white that the programs and the events are expected to align to one or more of the three pillars in the corporate strategy. These pillars being across the top there: enhance, collaborate, and influence. And there are also the 6 priority areas which branches should consider when they're actually putting together a program. And the final one here, which is in the circle, which is that branch programs should align to the competency framework. Again, it's something, if you're not familiar with, please do have a look about the competency framework, because it's linked to you as an individual, and to your development as well, but also to what you're putting in place in order to help the professional development of the members in your region. It's something there was an awful lot of work put into, and we look at how it fits into the events as I look forward now. Who's who at IOSH? I had to update this today, not this screen, because I am still here, but further on. This is just to say to you that there are a number of people that you may come across, apart from myself, who may be either talking to you. And for example, I'm about to go on holiday, so while I'm away, there's a networks team who will actually pick up anything in my absence and deal with anything they can deal with, or keep it until I return. So that's some of the networks inquiries. You'll be aware of trying to contact the membership team and the customer support center for your own membership. So these are people that you may come across. And for example, if you or whoever looks at your branch email address come across any inquiries just about membership, then those are ones that either can be sent to me or can be sent direct to the customer support center, to membership@iosh.com. Like all of that, all of these have got links to them. So if you are in any doubt, you can always refer back to these. Media inquiries, when they do happen, that will probably feed through myself, but just so you're aware that there are these various ones who could possibly get in touch. All of these are actually contained on the website, and all of these numbers, all of these emails can be on that contact page on the IOSH website in case you need to look at them. This is another just sort of graphic showing you some of the committees and how they fit into the whole structure, and where the presidential team, who is answerable to the council, and the council sits on top. On we have the board of trustees, and these various committees who deal with various areas. And these are the committees that, for example, things like wanting to change Regulation 15, they would have to go to some of these committees in order to get ratified. So this is not just something we can change just on a whim. And then obviously they feed into all of the operations, of which I'm part of myself. This is the one I've had to update, because you're probably aware that as of the 1st of August, Vanessa Howard-Whitcher has just come on board as the Chief Executive, and the Director of Professional Services, so that's a directorate to which I report into, that is on an interim basis until that's totally recruited, and that's a lady called Ruth Lake, who I haven't actually met yet, but that just puts the organization in perspective for you, and so you can see those various other people, and you may come across them as well. Probably not so much the Chief Operating Officer, Vicky, because that's more like internal functions, like the accounts operations and the admin functions. Some of these are some details around the teams that report into for example, into the Chief Executive's office. I'm not going to read all of this, but this one is where we sit as a function, we as in the regional managers and the branch coordinators. So we are the global networks, which is the third one there in the light green. And there's also, as part of ours, we have professional development, and that is, if you're familiar with Emmeline, I know, who was supporting you, and she is in that function in professional development, which is about CPD and IPD and that whole sort of area. And member engagement is something as well that we talk about quite a lot. You've talked about it a lot. Includes student membership, future leaders, the career hub, the Irish magazine. They all emanate from that sort of area. So that's pretty much the people that we meet with as part of our directorate. I'm not going to go into these in total reading all of the areas. They are ones you can go back and look at yourself, because things like, we obviously have a health and safety function like all of yourselves would have in your businesses. Some of the other things like strategic engagement and corporate engagement, they are areas that if we get in touch with some of the organizations or perhaps local stakeholders, these are people that we could possibly have to speak with about things like that, because they are leading on strategic development in IOSH. Say these ones here, governance, you see, comes under finance and governance are come under together, and then the customer services as well, which is another big part of it, and a central admin function. Obviously, we have a technology, and if you are one of the ones who has an IOSH laptop, this is the team where those people would come from, and we have a people team, or the HR function, which is called the people team. As I say, I know I'm speeding through lots of these things, but the idea is to give you a flavor so that then you can go back at another stage and have a look at some of these as well in your own time. But this is one of the important areas that you will all get involved in if you haven't already been pulled in by your committee into doing, for example, running events. It's something that is going to happen. I know there's an appetite there to involve everybody, and it's a really healthy thing to do, because then everybody gets a chance to contribute, but also to see how these things work and to add to that whole sort of process. So that's really important as well. So just to briefly look at running branch events, again, it's probably teaching you stuff that you're already aware of. But the big thing here is that whatever you're running has to have a member benefit. So that top box, that is really important. Some of the other things are, as you're aware, in general, we are talking to global audiences now far more than ever before, because you may very well have people attending your events who aren't even local people, depending on the topic that you're actually running. This is where the accessibility has actually increased, and so have the numbers who are actually attending at the moment. And as you can see there, we have had in the last, since we've been doing virtual events, we've had over 30,000 registrations, which is a huge number of people to actually reach with a lot of the messages. One of the other elements there, and we're perhaps lacking it a little bit, is the networking element, because obviously it's a little bit more difficult. We're not in a room together, so it's something can be thought about, and perhaps when we're still in this world where we're doing virtual meetings, where it still isn't the IOSH policy to actually meet together in rooms yet, then it's something, there are ways around that where you can actually have people contribute maybe at the end, or perhaps some of the CPD sessions that are run, they can be more on a networking. Or one of the other options is that a few of the committees are having what they call sort of coffee drop-in sessions, or drop-in sessions where there's fewer people invited, but there is much more of a discussion that happens. So it's just a thought. Obviously, education and professional development, I know it's a priority for you guys here, and that's really good. And I know you're tied in really well into your local educational establishments, and that's great, because that sort of gives us the next generation, hopefully, who are showing in, and who we're inviting along to meetings and to branch events. So there are various different types of events, and the ones that you'll see us talk about and that you guys are running are what we call the branch or regional virtual events. There are as well webinars which are run on a more, if you like, a more corporate IOSH way. These happen sort of regularly, usually on a Thursday. They try and keep these webinars. So they're run by our events team. As I was talking about, there's also networking events, drop-in sessions, seminars, and obviously you can have conferences and workshops as well. So all of these, and maybe even some sort of a combination of all of those is what works. These are just some of the areas, and I just wanted to get them up together that we thought about, where it's important to deliver a professional, well-coordinated and engaging program of events. And that's really important. And the other element here is that the events would be relevant. Obviously, not only would you not get the interest of people, but you wouldn't be doing anything for their professional development if it wasn't relevant. So it's relevant to people in their current roles, and then relevant to them as they are progressing, hopefully as well in their careers. And in all of this, hopefully we understand that the roles that, let's say, I play in this is that I'm actually supporting you and helping to, as I say, put some of these programs together, but also helping to get some of these events, some of these meetings actually off the ground and out to the individuals and to the members, and supporting the whole community around the speakers yourselves, and then the members as well. One part of it as well, the other word that we do keep coming up with is collaboration and coordination of activities. And that's really important, one, because it's one of the main things that we're looking at now, but also because it is envisaged that this would be the way that ahead for us, that we would try and do much more collaboration, as I was saying earlier, on the different levels, hopefully going forward. These are here some of the main areas from experience that we found will make you plan a really good event. So we have the planning stage, promotional stage, the pre-event stage, the actual event, and then the post-event. And all of those are actually almost like of equal weighting as we go through it. And just to quickly put this in a pictorial way, we would have there at the top yourselves, the committee, planning the topic, planning the area, ensuring that it meets with the competency framework. That's what the CF there is. Looking to check the level that is this going to be a basic level, an intermediate, or an advanced level event that's been put forward. Are we collaborating with somebody? If we are collaborating with somebody, then there would be somebody hopefully on the committee who would liaise with the person or with the organization that's being collaborated with, or with just the speaker. And then we go down to where the event lead. So it's a really good idea to have somebody who is actually heading up and leading on each event. And it absolutely doesn't have to be, and probably shouldn't be, somebody who is one of the executive or the principal officers on the committee. They might be doing some of the events, but it's really good idea to get everybody involved in doing this, as I was saying earlier. And then we're looking at there on the light blue box where the event is actually set up, a form is set up. I was mentioning that earlier. There is a particular form, and I will raise it on Zoom and send the link through. And then that's the link that usually the communications coordinator, but people on the committee as well will begin to disseminate that information to get the registrations on board. And then from then the whole way through, actually, it is a pretty much, I will be liaising to say how many people are booked. Are there enough people booked? You may be coming back to me as a committee saying, we're not pulling in the right number of people. What can we do? So there are the other ways of doing that, of perhaps more social media, perhaps another committee mailer, which you will get through to your email accounts as a message from your network. They're the committee mailers that come through. Obviously, with any event that you're doing, you should really have some sort of a run through. Now, what we're doing is, if there's a few speakers, we generally log on to the call 60, 50, or even 30 minutes beforehand to make sure that the speaker is happy. The speaker knows who is chairing the event, who is actually looking at the Q&A, etc. on the day, if the slides are working okay, if the audio is working, etc. And how all that's going to be dealt with. So that's something that happens usually just prior to the start of the events. That's what seems to be working well at the moment. Obviously, what I'm saying there is that having an actual, it sounds very formal to say an event delivery team, but actually that is what happens. So if you have your chair and your person who's looking at the questions and answers, all of that is actually a team, and that's what makes it work really well and will make it look sort of seamless. At the end of all of that, you'll be aware that you get sent, or I send you out, I send everybody who was attending the event a survey, and that survey gets a little bit of analysis, and that gets back to the committee, and hopefully that's something that is looked at. We've just actually added an extra section to that survey in the last couple of weeks, which is actually asking people, do they have any areas that they want looked at by their committee or in their region? So we can provide that information back to you, so you can see what it is and see if that matches with your own priorities or what you've looked at. It may not match with even IOSH priorities, but if it does, it's just seemed to be a worthwhile thing. But you can let me know as time goes on whether that it has been worthwhile to get. This just shows in a linear way how the different steps that you go through. And again, I will share this so everybody has this, so you get an idea of the best way of going about this. And if you actually follow some of these steps through, then you will actually get to a well-organized event at the end of that. And it does, there's a link at the bottom there, which is to the forms and templates, and that's where you get that form that we were talking about, the virtual event form, which needs to be filled in at the beginning of an event. And this is just giving you some more detail on that, where the committee yourselves submit the event to me, and through that I ensure that forms part of the virtual events on the web page. So for anybody checking out the web page, there is a section that says volunteer-led events, and that is where that form that you fill out and the description that's given of the event that's about to happen, that is what appears there on the events page. I'll usually have a quick check through just to understand if the information that's been given reads okay, or if it's slightly longer than it should be, or whatever. So sorry, I'll just admit, Charlene, when we get an email and the branch coordinator submits an email to the members via the committee mailer system. So that is something that is available to you as a tool to communicate directly to your members. It's not a two-way tool, it is just a broadcast one. So it sends the message out, and you can send 2 of those per week, and it's usually a good idea to start sending those as soon as you know there's an event. You can send a link to register for an event, and then send perhaps a note to say just a reminder or a last chance to book, something of that nature. It's really good in those messages, as in your social media messages. If you keep it quite tight, nobody's going to read several paragraphs of anything, you'll know yourselves, you lose interest after the first paragraph. So the important details are that you're telling somebody what it is about, and you're including in it some indication of who the target audience is, and what the content is. And as it says here, whether it's basic, intermediate, or advanced, so that your members can make a decision on whether it is the right event or the right meeting for them to attend. And also in some way it will tell them how that aligns to the competencies, to the IOSH competency framework, because hopefully you're aware that when you're doing your own CPD, that you will be able to go on to Blueprint, and this will map your qualifications and experience to the competency framework. So hopefully all the members are actually doing that as well. So it is good that that's how it links in with the events that you're running yourselves at a branch level. It is really important that there is a run through of the event. As I say, whether that is just before the event or not, that's really important, so that one, you're very much aware of how the speaker is going to run the event, but also that the speaker is confident that they know who's speaking first, who then speaks, as I say, who the chair is, who the host is, who's looking after the questions, and things like if you or the speaker wants to run a poll, that is something that's sorted out usually in advance. It can be done at the time during the meeting. It's better if it's done beforehand. And the responsibility for actually leading and delivering it is yours. It does rest with the committee. I'm obviously, particularly as they're virtual events, I'm there to help, to support, but it is yourselves that are actually leading and have the responsibility for the delivery of the event. Generally, these, as I say, I'm looking at well, as I look down some of these things, I know the things that you've already done with some of your events, which have been really good and really useful, and things that like recordings can be done, and they can be added onto the IOSH YouTube channel. You can have breakout rooms. Obviously, if you've got big numbers, that doesn't work really well, and you would have to have a facilitator per breakout room. But these are all facilities that can be thought about, that are there, but maybe something that you want to look into it for particular events and for particular audiences, depending on the topic that you're covering. As always, the chat window is the one that we have available for comments and questions, and that seems to work quite well, particularly when you have somebody who has taken control of the questions and answers, is able to compile them and then ask them of the speaker in the end, because there's usually a few that are similar as we go through any of the presentations. It's important as well that the event not only starts with an introduction, but it actually ends with something from whoever is chairing the event, which may be the committee chair, but it may be somebody else who's actually physically chairing the meeting that particular night. So that thanks obviously people for being there, and the speakers, etc. And also talks about any of the programs and events that you will be running, usually, but the next one is, and then also encourages hopefully people to fill in the post-event survey, because that can be really useful information, and I can work with you to look at that. That comes to the branch email box about 2 weeks after, depending on it. We allow a time for people to actually answer that. I know it can be a little bit repetitive in some ways because it is the same one, but it does give like a baseline from understanding, are we doing the correct thing? Are we reaching the audience in the correct way? These are some of the areas that we have looked back over the successful events. So therefore it's not just successful from numbers, because that isn't the primary thing to look at. It's really the quality, because really what we are we are all about, and I hopefully you'll agree on this as well, is that it is actually the quality of the event and the quality of the audience rather than the quantity. Obviously, I discussed the fact that we have had really big numbers, but it is quality at the end of the day. So if we actually have all of these elements, as I've been talking about them before, but something that I didn't talk about is obviously engaging speakers. That's something that if you have an engaging speaker, it's obviously going to keep people's attention for longer and they will come back. That's the other thing as well. If you actually have that aligning to the competency framework, I've really spoken through most of these already. Something there, the mentoring support, that is something that can actually come out of any of the presentations, particularly, for example, if you did run like a CPD presentation, it would certainly be something that would probably come out of it as well. And the down near the bottom there, championing and promoting IOSH locally. That's really important, and that hopefully will help grow some of the members and perhaps grow some of the future leader members, which we're sort of all looking at the moment, and gives an opportunity to feedback, and we're talking about that in the survey as well. It is important too that we would look at after a session. It's not really a good idea to keep on doing sessions without looking back and saying, well, how did that actually go? And were there any reasons why it didn't work as well as it could? Or were there reasons why it worked really, really well? And the survey is one way of doing that. Also, your own input. You may have spoken with people as well. You may be working with people who attended, but yourselves as a committee, you have an important link into that to say, how did this go? Obviously, things like attendance records, I can provide all of those. And we do actually look at members and non-members. So sometimes we will have quite a few non-members, so that's a good opportunity to perhaps get the message out and perhaps look at how those new members can be brought on board as well. One of the things that I was saying, and this is something as I'm not going into huge detail about, but I did want to touch upon the whole communications and social media area. And these are some of the vehicles, if you like, for helping you to get your messages out there. The one at the top is obviously the committee mailer. I was talking about that earlier. There's the other social media. The one that seems to be the most used is LinkedIn by most people. That seems to be the one that's most used at the moment. There's also, if you're not already aware, if you're new to the committee, you're not aware that the branch has its own microsite, we used to call them, because it's called a networks page now. And that has got, for example, it can have information about events that you have done. And it will also give who the committee is as well. So that, and that has just been updated recently. The other communication which you will be getting regularly as members is Connect Diary. And once I know about that an event is running, every couple of weeks we will get an indication that the Connect Diary is looking for what events are up and coming. They will only do the next sort of month to 6 weeks, as far as I'm aware. It doesn't go very far out because there are too many events right across all of the branches. But the Connect Diary is, as I say, hopefully already popping into your accounts, and it is a way of getting to your members. It's also a way of you seeing perhaps events in other areas that you might want to perhaps tune into. And even if you can't get them live, in a lot of cases there are recordings of these events, so if it's something you want to get, it is possible to get a recording of a lot of them, because a lot of people are recording their events. There are other things, I say, like a newsletter, and the IOSH magazine. I'm not going to go into those in too great detail here this evening. But they are various things that the communications coordinator would very likely work. I'm quite happy to work with the communications coordinator. I actually have a marketing background myself, so I have a real interest in getting communication messages get out and how we do that and how we do that in the correct way and in the way that will be best for the messages. So I'm quite happy. I'm going to, like the treasurer role, I'm going to run a separate session that looks at all of these areas individually and in more detail. Things like, how do we use some of these tools to the best ability? How many words, for example, is it best to put in a social media communication? That's just one of the things. So there's lots of other areas. I'm going to look at that with the comms coordinator, and anybody else from the committee who would like to be part of that, or who is involved in comms coordination as a role, or in the tools that you have. I'm not going into the whole treasurer role this evening either, but just it would be remiss of me to leave out finances altogether, and just to say that there is a plan, and there will obviously be budgets in place for when activity gets back to normal, if we can call it that, which is, and each of the finances available are across a region. And but what needs to be looked at in every case is, when there is spend, we have got to understand that any spend is as for the direct benefit of our members. And that's really important for the charitable status of the institution, that any spend that is made, or any of the cases that are put forward for financial spend, actually meet the benefit of the members. And we have to ensure that it provides a good return on the investment. And that, so for example, if there was some material that was just for the help of maybe very small section and didn't support all of the members in the region, that mightn't be something that would be supported. And obviously the thing that comes through in all of these themes is that with any spend, it does have to align to IOSH objectives, to the strategy, and to the priorities of the organisation. Again, we're looking back at the competency framework and at the level that we are putting events out at. So that's something I'll cover in more detail at the treasurer's session, but that's just a flavour of it, and there are just some bullet points there which I can go through as well. One of the other parts, because this is like a generic introduction for yourselves as well, but one of the things that we do have to be aware of is the guidelines around the data that we hold for members. And it's something that we have always been aware of from the point of view as being a membership organisation, but just so that you understand that as you volunteer for IOSH, you also come under the sort of rules and regulations that govern the looking after the member data and looking after the individual. And I would like to put it to you that what we are doing is, in the same way as we're looking after your individual data, we're doing the same for all of the members. And this is something that we are, it's not just that we want to do this as the right thing to do, we actually have to do this. We have to ensure that the data isn't being misused in any way, which you wouldn't want it to be done as well. So just if we can, the first messages are, if in any sort of doubt about using sort of member data, you can always consult me about that. There is, in this respect, an allocated branch email address, and that very much was put in place so that no individual volunteer would actually have to use their own email address, or their own personal one, because that's something that we shouldn't be doing, because that leads you down the wrong path. And also to ensure that any social media tools that are being used are following the IOSH guidelines, which I can help out on if in any doubt. And so this is why we have the committee mailer messages, so that you can use that. That is a way of doing it. it's possibly something you've never even done yourselves, but it's all about not storing people's contact details unless, well, not storing them unless somebody has given you them, has agreed, has said that you can have their contact details. And give members, in general, if you are working as volunteers on IOSH Business, it is really useful to use your branch email address, because that isn't your own personal email, and use the tools that are actually given. There are a number of useful links on this. If you had the time and the wherewithal to look, you could actually have a look through the GDPR. There's lots of legal terms. It's just something that we need to sort of bring to your attention in case it ever becomes, it particularly gets into place, I think, gets into play when we have in-person events, for example. I know in years gone by, people were doing things like taking registration lists, etc. And that's not something that we actually do. And none of the data that I would get through, or that we would have, say, I would send surveys out, I don't share that between people. That is just out to individuals, and it's all anonymized, all of the data that goes. So that's just to I say, I don't want to, that is actually the end, you'll be pleased to hear, of the actual presentation. And I know I have rushed through what I'm doing, but I just wanted to give you that general introduction so that you've got a basis for where you're working from, and to say a really big, and it is a genuine, really big thank you to you for giving your time and for volunteering. And I am not in any doubt that it does actually take up quite a lot of your time if you're doing this. And that is, you know, if as the members, and I know I'm really, really grateful that you actually do that. Now, does anybody have any questions on all of that, or have I ranted too much? You're supposed to say no to that part of it, actually.
No, no, you didn't rant too much. You didn't.
I mean, what I will do is, I say, I don't want to keep you on. You're very good to give us. This is like outside of you doing your roles on the committee. So I'm going to do, as I say, in the next couple of days, I'll send you this slide deck, and I'll send the specifics around the different role in a PDF format, so that you can see that as well. And then I'll set up the other sessions. A couple of my colleagues, because I will be away on holidays for a couple of weeks, are actually running sessions for treasurers and for communications coordinators. It may be the timing doesn't suit you. I'm very much aware of that. So, you know, I can do something separately for you guys as well. So it needs to work. I don't know. I think in general, seems to work better for you if you work outside of your working day. So obviously we'll go along with that. It's a choice. What I do have to do is just to ensure that everybody has actually been covered by one of these inductions, because it's almost like we're saying to you, yeah, this is from us. We're not, our expectations, this is laying out what the expectations are for you above and beyond as a volunteer. So if there's no, are there any questions anybody got? Okay, listen, I seriously, I'm not going to keep you for too long, longer. And if you're happy, Jason, I'll end that.
Just want to say thank you very much, Catherine, for taking this time to walk through the roles of the committee, even the structure of IOSH and the regulations. It's something that, I mean, some of us probably have been familiar with before, but it's always a good reminder, and certainly for the new members of the executive, it's probably something that they've seen for the first time. So I think that bodes well in terms of supporting how we function.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, yeah, that's really, I'm going to end the recording here.